Hello and welcome to the second week of our openSAP course on semantic notation. Last week we have been introducing the need for a semantic notation in business communication. We have done this by comparing the situation in business communication to other disciplines, for instance to road signs, to electric engineering, to sheet music or to architecture. And then we have been looking at the way we see on our charts and our tables in business communication. It's completely different to the other disciplines where they have a standard notation for sheet music and for road signs, and we show everything differently. It's on the personal taste of the one who designs a chart and a table, what color he uses, what chart type, the choice of chart type even is his personal selection, and so we get a complete different picture. That's why we introduced a kind of semantic notation for business communication as well. And we did it by introducing, for instance, a kind of pattern for scenarios, so that we see actual scenarios or we display actual scenarios in a solid way, and the planned scenarios are displayed outlined. They still have to be filled up. And this is only one example. We have been talking about variances, we have been talking about the styles for titles, and so on. And we have explained that it is very helpful to do that. And if we do that and we apply this semantic notation to all charts, to all tables, to all reports, to all presentations, we get a similar look as we have in other disciplines. We get a kind of visual language for business communication. This week we will be talking about a bigger picture. Semantic notation is only a part of a comprehensive set of rules for the better design of reports and presentations. Actually, this bigger set of rules comprises 7 steps, the 7 steps of the success formula for IBCS. Let me shortly go through this 7-step formula. It's about say, it's about unify, condense, check, express, simplify, and structure, forming together the acronym SUCCESS. Now let me go through those 7 steps, one after the other, and just briefly introducing it, we will go into more detail in the next units. Let's start with say. Every good report and every good presentation has a message. That's why a report is called report. It has to report something. A report without a message is actually no report. So first we should know what message we want to convey to the audience of our report or to the audience of our presentation. And this message has to be interesting. Not a mundane message like the one in this cartoon, where he says, well, we have an, let's say, export share of 25%. This is probably not so interesting. It would be more interesting to compare those 25% to previous year or to plan, or to see how it developed in the last month or last years, or even to explain why it's 25%, or to make suggestions on how to increase those 25% to 30%. That would be interesting messages. The second step is about giving our report and our presentation a good structure. Once we know what we want to convey, we could start building a kind of, let's say, storyline. A good storyline will help to understand that message. And that good storyline is not only visualized in tables that have probably a good structure. It's also, let's say, a table of contents in a bigger report of, let's say, 10 or 15 pages, or it's a good structure of a dashboard. Just to go briefly into it, again with a cartoon, there are 3 rules we will go into in the next unit. The first rule is that a good structure has homogeneous elements. The second one is that they are non-overlapping, and the third one is that they are collectively exhaustive. Those 2 steps, the first steps of our success formula, form a kind of conceptual rule. The reason why is that we have not been talking about visual design yet. It's pure conceptual. What do you want to convey and how do you structure it? So we call it the conceptual design of a report, of a presentation. Once we know what we want to tell the audience, now we can think about how to visualize it. And that's the next step of our success formula. We talk about how to express our message. We choose the right way to visualize that. Choose a proper visualization. Let me explain it again in a cartoon. This might be a way to explain that the situation is critical, but you will not immediately understand it. It would be much better visually to do it this way. You see immediately that the situation is critical, and you don't have to explain that picture with 1,000 words, but the picture tells you more than 1,000 words, or is worth more than 1,000 words. Once we know what we want to tell and we have selected a proper visualization, then we should avoid all superfluous thing. Everything visually from the design perspective that is superfluous and has no meaning. Color without a meaning, frame without a meaning, shadows, 3D, all that visual stuff that probably looks nice but has no meaning should be avoided. Let's look again at a cartoon. You see nothing because there is too much clutter around those numbers, and if you remove that clutter, you can immediately read the 7.17. Once we have removed all that visual clutter, we do not remove the information, we remove the visual clutter. So we have gained space. And if we have gained space, the question is, what are we doing with that space? Well, we can add information. We can add information that helps us to understand the context around the message we want to convey. If you look at those 2 guys looking for a way, one has a map with the roads and the other one has a map with the cities, the places. If they increase information density of the map and have one map with the cities and the roads, it would be helpful to find the way. That's what we are talking about when increasing information density. Once we have increased the information density, we should check for visual integrity. Visual integrity is mainly about scaling. We should never truncate axes. We should never have distorted visualization elements, because then the visual perception will not fit to the numbers. For instance, if you have a column and this column is truncated, then the height of that column does not correspond to the number lying behind. So the visual perception of that column is just wrong. And we should avoid that, because then we do not visually perceive the right information. I want to show you that with a pie chart. Actually, we do not like pie charts too much. We will go into that later on. But if you want to manipulate a pie chart, then you could do it like this. Well, we have 5% market share. the number is 5. But what you visually perceive is much more. That's exactly about scaling, about checking the visual integrity. Those 4 visual steps I've introduced from express over simplify and condense and check, those 4 steps are called the perceptual design steps. It's about perception. And if you are interested in those perceptual design principles, then you probably find more by reading the books from, let's say, Edward Tufte is one of those guys, or Jean Zelazny is another guy who have invented a lot of rules about perceptual design. By the way, I forgot to mention that on the structural design, it's probably worth to read the lectures of Barbara Minto, the books from Barbara Minto. They are called the Pyramid Principle. So now that we have the structural design steps and we have the perceptual design steps, now we talk again about semantic notation. We think that semantic notation is the missing link to complete this success formula for international business communication standards. So you remember we introduced this semantic design, for instance, with plan and actual and showing all that solid or outlined visualization elements. And if we add that to the other rules, we get the complete picture of visual language of the international business communication standards. So together we have the success formula of the international business communication standards. In the next units, we will go through all those individual steps and see the individual rules in more detail. So hope to see you again in the next unit.